The Mariners will have to finish up their last road trip of the regular season without Julio Rodriguez. We'll get you set for their weekend series with the Royals and go over some off-season would you rathers here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Friday, September 23rd, 2022. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered all season long with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you want to hear from us even more, consider signing up for our Patreon. The link as well as our social accounts are in the description of the show wherever you're watching or listening to this. And on the show today, Julio Rodriguez is likely going on the IL. Why? That's for the best. And Colby's got 5 would you rathers for the offseason. We're going to go over a little later on in the show. But first, Colby, let's dive into this series that the Mariners are beginning at Kauffman Stadium down in Kansas City with the Royals starting tonight. They're going to be playing all the way through Sunday to wrap up their play with the Royals on the season. Of course, the Mariners handled this Royals team back in Seattle all the way back in April, I believe it was. Long time ago. And they're going to be catching Brady Singer tonight, who's been pretty good this year. He is rocking a 3.07 ERA this year. Marco Gonzalez is the counterpunch for the Mariners there, and then Logan Gilbert going on the bump for the M's tomorrow against Chris Bubich, who's really struggled. And then Sunday, Luis Castillo going for the Mariners, and of course everyone's favorite pitcher to be determined is going for the Royals on that one. So we'll see who is pitching for the Royals a little later on. But yeah, so what stands out to you here about this series heading into Kauffman Stadium? Of course, the Mariners going to be without Julio Rodriguez. We'll be talking about that a little later on. But what's your overall feel?
Well, it's hard to feel too good about anything the Mariners are doing right now, just because, well, you've watched them on this road trip, so I don't feel great about it, especially without Julio, who's kind of been one of your only performing players. That being said, even without Julio, you should still win this series. Of course, you should have won the Angels series. You should have won the A's series. So, same song, hopefully different result, but we'll see how it goes. But no, I mean, you're not throwing your best until Sunday at the earliest. But Gilbert's been very good, and honestly, Marco's been pretty good lately as well. So you feel pretty good about whoever's starting right now. And yeah, the bats should be enough. This isn't a good Royals team. They sold at the deadline. Mariners don't have to worry about Whit Merrifield anymore. They don't have to worry about Andrew Benintendi. This is a team that's not very good, and yet scares the daylights out of me because they're like the antithesis of the Mariners. They're still athletic. They catch the ball. They run around. The Mariners do none of those things. And I can only pray that Jesse Winker isn't asked to cover ground in Kauffman Stadium once. Although I have a feeling he will probably be in left field tonight with Jarred in center. So, yay. But no, they got to find a way to score some runs, as they always do. Home runs, Kauffman Stadium's not exactly known for the home runs total, but it's a big outfield. There's curved walls. So you put one in the gap, you can get plenty of extra bases. And this is where, you'd like to see Sam Haggerty step up and perform a little bit. This is a ballpark that's kind of built for his skill set. Same with Dylan Moore, JP Crawford, at like the slap hitters, more or less. This is kind of the ballpark that's built for them. And then, we'll see. It's going to be a lineup without Gino. It's going to be a lineup without Julio. So they're going to need other players to step up. And I don't know, I guess it's worth noting, since he's kind of the man of the hour, Jarred Kelenic had his best game of his career in Kansas City at 2 home runs. I think off a Singer. Maybe it was Coar. I'm trying to remember who it was, but that was last year. So, maybe Kelnick can
I feel like one of them was off of a lefty. Maybe that was like a reliever that came in. I can't remember.
I don't think
now,
so,
though.
but anyways.
Help us out down below if you're watching on YouTube. Help us out down below if you remember.
Yes, and not because comments are good for the YouTube algoritome.
Totally, definitely not.
No, this is for us. Yes. Well, and you. So yeah, you need somebody to step up, and Santana's going back to Kansas City. I mean, it's not like that's a huge deal, but sometimes that sparks something. So again, we'll see how it all works out. The bullpen it got used pretty good, but you do have the off day on Monday to kind of plan around, and hopefully, with Marco, Logan, and Luis, you feel pretty good that those guys are going to give you innings at least. We'll see if Luis can bounce back on Sunday, but yeah, it's going to be warm in Kansas City. It's always warm, even in September.
Remember what Ichiro said about Kansas City.
Yes, can't repeat it on the show. But at least you didn't get there in July or August. You're there in September. There was rain in the forecast today. I don't know if that's how that's going to play in, but it's probably going to be pretty humid as well. So we'll see how it works. And there's a lot of pieces that are going to be moving on a daily basis here. Is Ty France going to play third base tonight? I hope so, because that means maybe Jesse Winker's DHing. So yeah, it's one of those things. It's tough to really feel good about where this team is at right now, but with a magic number of 9, you really only have to win 5 or 6 games here down the stretch to sneak into the playoffs. So we'll see how it goes tonight, but it'd be very nice if they could win the first game of a series just to, have that in your back pocket. So maybe you don't want to punt a game, but like if something gets a little out of hand, you're not desperate to rush the bullpen out there and try and save you because you have the win in your back pocket.
For the reason that you listed with the big outfield, just how big Kauffman Stadium is in general, I think this is going to be a big series for some of the guys that you listed there: Dylan Moore, Sam Haggerty. The guys that have speed, Jarred Kelenic. We saw Kelnick hit the 30 feet per second mark on his double yesterday. Like, the Mariners obviously not known for speed, but they do have some guys that can run a little bit. So if you can put a ball in the gap, if you can put a ball down the line, you're going to be able to get at least a free double and probably a triple, with one of those guys. So that's probably how the Mariners are going to have to win these games, right? It's not going to be the home run ball because, like you said, Kauffman Stadium's one of the hardest ballparks to hit home runs in. And so you're going to have to find other ways to win. And this offense hasn't really been able to do that for the most part, especially as of late. But look, you're going to have to adapt, right? You got to be adaptable as a team, and you got to learn to get back into that, because they were doing that a little bit, especially during the win streak. It's just you got to be able to. The situation isn't always going to call for a walk and a home run. You got to find other ways to win. Just have to do it. And so, they do have guys that can do that. They do have players that are capable of doing that and making things happen on the base pass. But it's all about execution at the end of the day. So we'll see.
Yep.
But yeah, so I think overall you still got to feel good about, heading into the series just on paper, but you never know, right? With this team, we've seen the last 2 series and how they've gone. As for, France and where he ends up, I mean, I think you kind of have to play him at third base pretty consistently here over the next couple weeks, because that's probably the only way that you're going to be able to get him, Gino Suarez, and Carlos Santana all in the same lineup in the playoffs. And you can't just throw France in at third base with like 2 games under his belt. So you got to get him reps, even though that you and I don't think that he is very capable there on the hot corner. You're going to need to do that, because that seems like the only option there. But yeah, this is like you said, this is one of those series where things get out of hand. Don't push it too hard. Don't you don't need to. You have such a great buffer still, even with the Orioles winning last night against the Astros. You still have basically a 5-game lead on the Orioles right now. When you factor in the tiebreaker, you're fine. You're fine. You're not really in any sort of danger right now to lose your playoff spot. And as we said on yesterday's show, the wild card one would be nice. Hosting playoff games in Seattle would be really nice. But it's not, worth damaging your bullpen or risking injury to one of your guys who's laboring an ailment right now for. So just play it safe, and we're going to be talking about playing it safe with Julio Rodriguez in a moment. But you have something to add real quick?
No, I just I had somebody reach out and ask if we could maybe explain the magic number idea
Okay.
a little bit. So basically, guys, it's very simple, right? The Mariners are being chased by the Baltimore Orioles, not the White Sox. I know some people tried to shoehorn the White Sox into this discussion. They're not. The White Sox are out. So it's Seattle and Baltimore. So that's it. That makes the magic number incredibly easy. The Mariners have, as Ty mentioned, a 4-game lead on Baltimore, but they also have the tiebreaker, which makes it a de facto five game lead. There is no game 163 this year. Head-to-head record is the tiebreaker. So Seattle has that over Baltimore, which means that with a 5-game lead and each team having 13 to go, 14 to go. 14? 13.
13.
13.
Yeah, both the Orioles and Mariners have 13 left.
Right. So it's pretty simple, right? With a 5-game lead, the Orioles have to be 5 games better than the Mariners. Yes?
Yeah. And so that, and while, 5, 13, like the math is there, right? Like it can be done. That is incredibly hard to accomplish, even with the way that the Mariners are playing right now.
Right.
Because that means that the Orioles basically, they have to line up, they have to be, and they're not playing great ball. Obviously, they beat the Astros, shut out the Astros yesterday, but that's not going to happen every night.
Even if the Mariners went, even if the Orioles went undefeated, they went 13-0. Seattle would have to go. If Seattle goes 8-5, it's over. You still get in. So magic number is very simple. If you want to know how to deduct from it, every Mariner win, the number goes down. Every Orioles loss, the number goes down, and those aren't connected. The Mariners don't need to win and have Baltimore lose for that number to go down. Mariners win, number goes down. Orioles lose, number goes down. And any combination of those two things that equals 9 means the Mariners are in the playoffs. So the Mariners win 5 games from here to the end of the year, and Baltimore loses 4, you're still in.
Yep.
That's how good of a spot the Mariners are in right now. So yeah, just keep in mind, Baltimore loses, knock a number off. Seattle wins, knock a number off. Both teams lose, number doesn't go anywhere. One team wins, or Baltimore wins, the Mariners don't, number doesn't go anywhere. Number can only go down.
Yeah, it doesn't go up.
Right. So yep, just Mariners wins plus Baltimore losses has to equal 9 before the end of the year. And if that happens, you're in.
Mm-hmm. All right. So speaking of getting in, speaking of the postseason, we are 13 games away. There isn't a whole lot of time, but there still is potentially enough time to get Julio Rodriguez right. And right now the report is that he is likely heading to the injured list. We'll be talking about why that's probably for the best in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sporting wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to BetOnline.net or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline is where the game starts. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. So, according to Ryan Divish, who won't be covering the games this week, Adam Jude will be covering the games for the Times. But according to Divish, Julio Rodriguez is likely heading to the injured list. Now, Daniel Kramer of MLB.com followed that up and added that, it's not official yet that he's going on the IL, but the Mariners are going to, at the very least, play things very cautiously with Julio here. So definitely you're not going to see him in Kansas City. And it seems like at the end of the day, he probably is going to go on the injured list. So you're not going to see him against Texas either. You won't see him for the next 10 days, pretty much, at the very least. And look, while it sucks to lose his bat right now with the way that the offense is performing, it's better to do this now because you absolutely need him. If you have any aspirations of winning games in the postseason and advancing through the postseason, you need Julio Rodriguez. But not only do you need his bat, you need his glove. You need him to be able to play center field because DH is going to be a logjam. Once Gino Suarez comes back from his injury, and with the way that, they're playing Ty France at third base now, it doesn't seem like Gino is going to play third base again this season. So if you want Suarez in the lineup, he's got to be the DH. So you need Julio to play in center field. So ultimately, for me, this is the best decision that you could make. This is probably the decision that they should have made when this issue first arose in Anaheim. But, it's better not to just, continue to force the issue. It's better not to double down here. This is what's for the best. Give him all the time that he needs to rest up because you need him to be able to play in the outfield. And of course you need him to hit, but it's very, very important just from a pure lineup construction standpoint that he is able to play in the outfield.
Yeah, it's a bummer. There's no way around it. It more or less ends his regular season. He'll make it back for the final 3 games against Detroit, but yeah, then we'll see how this impacts his rookie of the year. Chase, obviously 30-30's out the window now. It's a bummer, but this thing might have been avoided had the Mariners had some foresight and put him on the IL when it was initially a problem. And we've talked about this, at length, the Mariners lack of caution when dealing with some of these, bruises and back pains and things like that. They pretty much just let guys sit on the bench for 3 or 4 days and hope that would fix it and then, later on realize, oh, we probably should have put him on the IL, but now it's a sunk cost. So now we just kind of got to roll with it. They did it with Ty France in the wrist. They did it with Mitch Haniger in his back. They've done it with Cal Raleigh in his thumb. Now they did it with Julio in his back. If you put Julio on the IL when it first happened, you would have him back in 3 days, not 10. So yeah, it's a bummer. I think this is rather poor planning on the Mariners' part to continue to push him the way they did. We've seen them do it in the past with other guys. So to me, this is an issue for the offseason right now. It's a bummer, but it is what it is. And you, like Ty said, you need Julio Rodriguez. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. You need Julio Rodriguez in the playoffs, and this is the best way to make sure you have him in the playoffs. So it's a back thing. There's no guarantee he doesn't, creep up on him again in October. But that's the risk you run. You try and do everything you can to make sure you have as healthy of a team as you can in October. And you get to do that because of your lead in the wild card standings. It's a luxury that you needed to take advantage of earlier. They didn't. Now they have to take advantage of it, and it's unfortunate that it happens to Julio and Gino, who are quite literally the 2 best players on the Seattle Mariners this year, at least by F4.
Yeah. I also kind of want to address something that I got a response to a tweet about the Julio situation on Twitter, and talking about how, it's going to be hard for Julio to go from 0 to hero in the playoffs. The Mariners don't need Julio to play hero ball necessarily, but they do need his presence. Mm-hmm. But let's not get it twisted here. The Mariners can win playoff games without Julio putting the team on his back. But guys have to perform, right? Guys have to execute. Mitch Haniger has to step up. Ty France has to step up. Carlos Santana has to step up. Dylan Moore, Sam Haggerty, whoever's going to be able to get into this lineup, they have to step up. Because even if Julio is playing hero ball, can't win all these games by himself. So, that while Julio is the face of the franchise, you can't just look at him as like the only guy or as the savior. You can't put that kind of expectation on him.
What do you think is more likely? I would say to this guy, that Julio's back issue creeps up again, and he misses games, and you don't quite know when you're going to have him. You don't know, and he's going to miss games anyways, and therefore the rust thing is still going to set in. Do you think that's more likely to happen than, he goes out for 10 days, sits out for 10 days, and then comes back with 3 games left in the regular season to try and get ready? Like, which one do you think? Do you think those two are not do you think one of those things isn't going to happen? Is it more likely if you just kind of try and Julio play through this, that he re-injures the back worse than it currently is?
Mm.
Or are you more concerned about, well, what if he gets rusty with 10
Yeah.
days off?
And I'm not
Both are not good.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that the fellow here that responded to me is saying that they should have him play through it. I think he's mostly just talking about how unfortunate the whole situation is.
Mm-hmm.
But
it is,
you know, and it sucks, you know. But I you know, from my point of view, ultimately him going on the IL, that, you know, at this point, given just everything that's happened here and just trying to move forward, like, that's the best possible situation for both he and the team, and the best way, for me, in my opinion, for them to get the most out of Julio in the postseason as well. I mean, this is kind of their only option, really, because, like, again, like you said, if he's just playing through the injury, you saw how it was affecting him yesterday, and that's a 21-year-old. Guys, I mean, he's never going to be in this shape for the rest of his life. You know, like, this is like peak athletic, you know, build for him right now. So you saw how he was coming off of the field. He looked sick to me. Like, he looked like he could hardly breathe. He looked a little woozy. He was walking very stiff. Like, if that's impacting him in that sort of way, he shouldn't be playing baseball right now. So, you know, hopefully it only takes the minimum 10 days. Maybe it takes the rest of the regular season. And if so, then, you know, so be it. I still think that he has the Rookie of the Year in the bag. Obviously, Adley's been fantastic, and Adley could have a great finish to the season. But considering all the things that Julio has still accomplished, yeah, he's not going to get to 30-30, which is really unfortunate, and that sucks. But he's still, you know, done incredible things that no one has done in this game before, things that, you know, only a couple of people have done before as rookies. Like, he's had an incredible, insane year. It's kind of, you know, it's a little bit of a similar discussion to I mean, it's not necessarily the same, but it's a little bit similar to the whole MVP discussion going on with Shohei and Aaron Judge right now. And it's like, you know, Shohei's having a great year and obviously doing these things that, you know, people have never done before, but also Aaron Judge is like breaking records, right? And Julio's breaking records this year. Like, he's literally etching his name into the history book. So to me, it's still not even a question in my mind that Julio should be the Rookie of the Year, whether or not he plays another game this regular season. All right. Anyway, so let's move on to the offseason. You know, again, we're not going to do a ton of off-season talk the rest of the way, but we're going to mix it in here a little bit, and start looking towards the future just a little bit. So Colby has 5 would you rathers that we're going to be going over here over the last 10 or so minutes of this show. So Colby, what do you got for me?
All right, Ty. Would you rather fight 1,000 Carlos Santanas or 1 Julio Rodriguez? No, okay. 1,000 duck-sized Carlos Santanas. Or 1 Julio. 1 Julio.
Or just 1 Julio, just 1 regular
Julio.
Julio?
100% healthy Julio.
Or 1,000 duck-sized Carlos Santanas?
Let's make it 100.
100?
Yeah.
The 100 Carlos Santanas.
All right. But no, seriously. So off-season would you rathers. Have a few of these. I picked 5. I don't know why I picked these 5. I think some of them are pretty good. Some of them, you know, we'll see. So, Ty, first up, would you rather guarantee Carlos Correa $200 million or give Mitch Haniger 3 fully guaranteed years?
There's no cost associated with that? Just 3 fully guaranteed years?
Be realistic.
Be realistic, of course, yeah.
You're not getting him for 3 years, $5 million a year. Like, that's not happening.
Yeah. Haniger just keeps on getting hurt. And that has to be taken into account here. Whether you like it or not, he keeps on getting hurt. And whether that's by his fault or not, he keeps on getting hurt. It's just the way it is. On top of that, he hasn't been particularly good this year. So when you factor in injuries, you factor in, you know, obviously he has a great arm, but the rest of the defense is subpar. Non-zero chance that he's just going to have to be a DH guy at some point, even in those 3 years. To me, it's Correa, even though that, you know, I'm not high on Correa as some people are. He's not my top target heading into the offseason for the Mariners. He's not even in my top 2 short, like, middle infield candidates for the Mariners, personally. And part of that is obviously back issues. I think he's just also kind of overrated. He's not a superstar like some people make him out to be. He's not. He's a really good player. Don't get me wrong. Not a bad player by any means. Really good player. I would go Correa here. Even though that I do have some hesitancy with going, $200 million, which likely means like a 7-year commitment. He's still, playing at a pretty high level right now. He plays at a position that the Mariners greatly need, in my opinion. And I mean, that's still like, even if he's not like a 5, 6, 7 win guy, like some people think he might be, still 3, 4 wins is really good. And the Mariners could use that. So if that costs $200 million, so be it.
Okay.
I want to know what you think, though. I want your answer.
Correa, not close.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm also not a huge Correa guy, but I'm not giving Mitch Haniger 2 guaranteed years, let alone 3. I can't trust the dude, and I have to have somebody who's going to play.
Yeah.
The beauty of Correa is that, if he loses some athleticism, even though he's only 27, he'll be pretty good at third base too.
Yeah.
Down the line. So I'm not too worried, but the bat will still be fine. All right. So a couple injury prone guys here. Who would you rather give $50 million to? Zach Eflin or Mitch Haniger?
It's interesting because, Eflin has been really good at Citizens Bank, and he's been dreadful on the road. And obviously that's like in 30 or so innings this year. I don't know historically how that goes for him. But, you think about T-Mobile Park, and he should be fine, theoretically. I like Eflin. I think the Mariners should upgrade their number 5. So it's kind of, same issues for me with Mitch, obviously. And you said it was $50 million, so that's probably another 3-year deal right there that we're talking about. So, yeah, for the same reasons that I would say no to Mitch with the Correa situation, getting a number 5 starter who I think might, who has pretty significant upside to me, and has more upside than Marco Gonzalez does, yeah, that's more valuable to me than a corner outfielder with declining defense and health issues.
Yeah, Mitch is just more replaceable.
Yeah, it's just easier to find corner outfield guys,
right without costing a ton. Like you can trade for a decent one
with like a 120, 110 WRC plus.
Yeah. Right, and I know Mitch is like a lot of people. Well, he's a 120 WRC plus. That's 10% worse offensively. Yes, but there are other ways to provide value, like defense and base running. So you can actually get a lesser bat than Haniger in right field and still improve your team overall. One of the ways you do that is by preventing runs, which the Mariners are pretty good at right now. Might be better with a good defensive outfield. So I would say Eflin as well. All right, so this one and this next one, I think this will drive a lot of people crazy. That's why I picked it. You have to pick one to be the starting left fielder for the Seattle Mariners next year. Jesse Winker or Joey Gallo?
Oh, man. I mean, you can't say that, like, because, like, are you giving up much offensive upside here? Because, like, Jesse Winker walks, but so does Joey Gallo. Like, obviously, Gallo strikes out a hell of a lot more than Jesse Winker does, but more home runs potentially. Also, shift ban, does that get the average up to, like, 210 to 220-ish for Gallo? Obviously, that's going to be singles. That's not a huge part of the argument here. But the big thing for me, obviously, is the significant defensive upgrade. This is why I'm picking Gallo here. As crazy as that sounds with how bad his year has been. And he's been a little bit better in LA, I think. I haven't checked in on him lately, but I think he was actually having some success down in LA. Outfield jump is still like 83rd percentile. I was looking into it earlier today. The outs above average are like 23rd percentile this year, but as long as the outfield jump is still pretty good, then
I think Jesse Winker is at 4.
Yeah, so that's still an upgrade. That's still technically an upgrade.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Gallo has the athleticism to be at least average to above average in left field. He's been basically damn near elite at times in his career. So when you pair that with some of the offensive flaws that are a little bit similar to Winkers, not entirely, but also some of the offensive positives that are very similar to Winkers, and there might be even more power upside there than Winker right now. Winker's obviously like the better bet to hit, I think, even even with how this year has gone, but the defensive value is just, I mean, there's really, words can't describe how much of a difference that is. Like, that's apples and oranges between Joey Gallo and Jesse Winker.
Yep. Because I specifically said left field, I would go with Gallo.
Yeah.
DH, probably Winker, but
yes, agreed. That's a good way
pretty
to
close.
put it.
Anyway, so 2 left. Got to wrap up here pretty quick. Would you rather, let's save that one for last. Would you rather trade for Max Kepler or Cody Bellinger to be in your outfield next year? For context, Bellinger has 1 year left of club control. Kepler has 2. Bellinger is going to make at least $20 million next year. Kepler, I think, is scheduled to make 8. Kepler has struggled this year, just like Bellinger. Bellinger clearly, MVP candidate, or did he win it a few years ago? I don't know if he won it.
I think he
won
it in 2019.
Right. So obviously there's more upside there. Bellinger, I believe, is younger. But anyways, who would you rather have? Kepler or Bellinger? Consider what you think the cost would be, and also salary, and control all that. Take everything into account.
Well, I don't think it costs really much, like in terms of trade value, right? Like I mean, for the Dodgers, obviously they're not going to be,
they might non-tender him.
Yeah, but they also might, they don't need the money, right? Or they're not going to be desperate to like get the $20 million off of their books. So that does have to factor in a little bit.
Still, I don't think they just want to waste $20 million if they can avoid it.
Sure. Yeah. So Kepler, I feel like you could get for Penn Murphy or less than that, honestly. Bellinger.
Maybe a Perlander Baroa if the Twins want like.
It's really interesting, but I think because like it's going to cost you $20 million to take on Bellinger, we got to be realistic about it. Call the Mariners cheap or what have you. Jerry DiPoto's got a budget that he's got to work with. That's going to take a pretty big chunk out of that budget.
Yeah.
And for a guy that's, hitting for, let me see here, 79 WRC plus this year and a 47 WRC plus last year. I know it's Cody Bellinger. I know the upside is there. I know he was a former MVP, all this stuff, but that's 2 full seasons now of him being garbage. Not even bad, like literally like unplayable. So I think I go Kepler here. As crazy as it sounds, I think I go Kepler here.
I do too. You also get the plus right field defense with Kepler, and again, another guy who should be helped with the shift bands. So I like Kepler quite a bit as a potential like Haniger replacement. We'll see if the Twins are buying or selling or what they're doing. They're kind of second year in a row they've disappointed, and are they looking to make changes? Or are they finally going to just start over? Like what are they going to do? Twins are a very interesting team this winter. All right, so now probably my favorite one. Very simple and topical. You're going to trade Jarred Kelenic, Ty. Who do you want? You get 2 offers. Which one of these are you taking? Kelnick for Vidal Brujan? I think it's Brujan, right?
Yeah.
Or Jarred Kelenic for Dustin May.
It's going to be Dustin May for me.
Yeah.
Always the starter. Always the starter. Also, Brujan's been, obviously he's, had great success down in the minors.
Brujan is Tampa Bay Rays Jarred Kelenic.
Basically. Yeah. But it's been a struggle at the major league level. And so, that's obviously a better comp. And I don't think you would get Dustin May for Jarred Kelenic straight up. No. But that's not the question. The question is, would I trade Jarred Kelenic for Dustin May or Vidal Brujan? It's Dustin May without hesitation for me.
Right. So real fast though, then would you trade Jarred Kelenic for Vidal Brujan? You play second.
Yeah.
You don't have a second baseman. Both guys have struggled at the big league level. Both guys have torched the minor league level. I think they're roughly the same age.
That one's hard. That one's hard because it's like there's no guarantee that Brujan's going to be good at second base, but there's also no guarantee that Kelnick's going to be good either. And he's at a position that hopefully the Mariners address in a significant fashion this offseason, maybe even to the point that Kelnick is more or less expendable. I don't know. It
Could
feels.
say the same about Brujan.
It feels.
Don't you want the Mariners to go get a middle infielder?
Yeah, but it's also I want them to go get a better middle infielder. You know? Like that's kind of the thing that's giving me pause is like I would rather that they go out and get someone better than Brujan for second or short, you know. So
yes, you're trading power for speed.
Yeah.
And you're trading corner outfield guy who should be a corner outfield for a middle infielder.
I'll say this, like if I saw that they did this, I would get it. I'd understand. I'd support it. Like
for Tampa Bay too.
Yeah, I'd get it for both sides. I totally understand it. I just don't. I'm gonna say no, just because I would like the Mariners to just aim a lot higher at second base or shortstop, whichever one.
I think. By the way, it's pronounced Brujan.
Yeah,
so.
It's Brujan. Yeah.
I think the thing with Brujan is that like, you know, you hope he's like, you acquire him and let's say you sign Xander or whoever, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, JP's your second baseman. Brujan is, you know, probably
Moore,
utility. Yeah.
He's your Dylan Moore, Abraham Toro.
But if
or
Brujan starts to outperform JP Crawford, you have a cheap guy for 5 years, and so 6 years actually still of club control. So, yeah, I don't know. That'd be an interesting one if it came down the pipe.
Let me ask you this before we hop off, just very quick. Do you think, or rather, do your feelings change if Kelnick is as good as we saw him yesterday for the rest of the season and even the playoffs? Really?
No.
Not at all?
No. There's nothing Kelnick can do in 50 at-bats that's going to change my mind. And by the way, my mind is still that he's going to be a good player. So it's not like I have a negative, you know, I just think Brujan's going to be a good player too. So,
Gotcha.
And, you know, I need middle infielders. I have outfielders. So it's just one of those things.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on Locked On Mariners. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dan Gonzalez, that's TANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen. Now make your second listen, the Locked On MLB podcast. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings humor, passion, and unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. Follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast Locked On MLB on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day and a beautiful baseball weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. Peace.